Okay, before I get into the main video here, just a little roundup of world news. I think I done this in the last video, but I omitted the election of Giorgia Meloni in Italy. Well, she seemed to be on course to be the next prime minister. But Italian politics is very complex, very fragmented. It's all built of coalitions. This would be following in line with what's happened in Sweden with a lurch to the right. In the case of Sweden, of course, the government of Magdalena Andersson has fallen, and in that case, it's to do with rising crime. I mean, certainly in Britain, the left often point to the Nordic countries as this kind of prototype for supposedly a great society, but Sweden clearly has had problems. Apparently, it's now the per capita the second highest gun crime rates in Europe after Croatia, which is appalling, at least in the European Union. Um, so that would explain that. In the case of Italy, immigration is a big issue. I will say this, though, I don't entirely trust Giorgia Meloni, not least her party's fascist background. It's all very well them saying, oh, well, Mussolini was 100 years ago, but they haven't denounced it. They haven't really separated themselves from it. And my biggest issue is her failure to really come down hard on Putin. Now, at the last moment, she's talking about supporting sanctions, but her allies, Matteo Salvini and others, are Putin stooges. And I do not trust anyone that cannot bring themselves to see what is obvious, and that right is right. I mean, I don't think you could sit on the fence when it comes to Putin. But anyway, other stories. The state funeral of Shinzo Abe in Tokyo. It's quite a big event, 700 dignitaries from around the world. British representation, the former Prime Minister Theresa May, Foreign Secretary James Cleverly. This was held at, I think it's called the Nippon Hall in Tokyo, if I'm getting that right. But it also attracted significant protests, but this is an unparalleled event to have a state funeral in post-war Japan. And in Bangladesh, big ferry disaster, over 60 people killed. Sadly, it's not unusual there. There's often overcrowded ferries, but big disaster there today. What I want to talk about, though, the main subject of this video is the Labour Party conference in Liverpool. No doubt there'll be more to say. This is one of those videos where, as the event goes on, Starmer hasn't made his keynote speech yet, but as the event goes on, no doubt there will be more to say. At least I don't think he's made his keynote speech. There was an extract where he paid tribute to the Queen, and they sang the national anthem, "God Save the King," which was, something that would have been controversial in the Corbyn years, and even with the hard left, it still is. Richard Burgon of that Corbynite faction said it's inappropriate somehow, as if His Majesty's official opposition shouldn't be singing the national anthem somehow. But I think that was right. I think it was justified. But today there's been a controversy that has overshadowed proceedings. The MP Rupa Hook, who's of South Asian descent, apparently at a fringe event, she was recorded as saying that the Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, is superficially black. I mean, this is a grotesque statement, and it just shows Labour still has a problem with identity politics. I mean, what does she expect a true black politician should be? Here's the thing, there's plenty of ground to criticise Kwarteng on. I think this is a pretty hard right government. I think Truss and Kwarteng are pandering to the rich. That's really the sort of territory that Labour should be lapping up. It's the sort of thing they should be really hammering the point that this is a government for the rich and powerful. But instead of doing that, you have this MP. Well, Starmer's doing it, but I mean, I think she's a backbencher. I don't think she's in the shadow cabinet, but it's a disgraceful comment. And I don't accept it's been taken out of context or anything like that. She said what she said. I've heard it. I heard the recording. Superficially black. Why not just criticize the Chancellor for being a Tory, for being hard right? It's this obsession that the Labour Party has with racial politics. It's so pathetic. Um, Back in the 1980s, the Saatchi brothers had that ad, and it showed a black guy outside, well, in a business suit, and it said, "To Labour, he's a black man. To the Tories, he's British." The point they were making was the Tories don't focus on identity politics. The Conservative Party have come a long way on race. Now, they haven't come a long way in terms of, I think, understanding the optics of, as I said in my video the other day, I just don't think they get public anger at a time when people are struggling. They're giving tax breaks to these greedy companies, these greedy energy companies. Trust says it's about attracting investment, but Germany has windfall tax and their economy seems to be doing well. The pound is falling, but we're in a bad position right now. So there's probably a lot of ground to criticise the Chancellor on. For goodness sake, don't bring race into it. Um, it's pathetic and it's a distraction. When David Lammy was asked about this by the Sky News reporter, he got cranky and he got angry and he said, "Oh, you're trying to take away from the big moment. That's what you should be reporting on." Um, I assume Starmer has made its keynote speech today, but he can't shoot the messengers. You know, he should be saying, "No, her statements are unacceptable, and I distance myself from them, and it's right that we've suspended her." Indeed, many would say that she's lucky she only got suspended and she wasn't sacked. You can imagine the outcry from the left if a white Tory MP was to say something like this about Diane Abbott or David Lammy. Um, they'd be saying it's the same old racist party, as Angela Rayner said in her rant. They're a bunch of misogynistic, homophobic racists. Labour seriously needs to clean itself up. To be fair to Starmer, I think he has made real efforts. He immediately went in to tackle the anti-Semitism problem. But what is it with these left-wing politicians and their fixation with race? It's just pathetic. So I've no sympathy with her. She could have attacked Kwarteng without bringing his race into it. So why? Why do that? Some might say, "Oh well, it's underhand to report this because it was a fringe event," but surely that shows the true thinking of Labour MPs or some Labour MPs. So instead of defending her, instead of blaming the press for reporting it, Labour MPs should just distance themselves from her statement, condemn it. Um, Starmer was quick to act; he suspended her, but some would say that doesn't go far enough. I mean, has she shown any remorse? Has she apologized? Maybe she will, but I think if she doesn't, she should basically, yeah, she should be sacked because this is not something an elected politician should be saying about a rival politician, that somehow he isn't falling into whatever stereotype she thinks a black man should be falling into. Um, this is not to defend Kwasi Kwarteng. I mean, he's a hard right Tory. Plenty of ground to criticise him. So criticise him for being a Tory. Criticise his fiscal policies. Criticise his mini budget. But for goodness sake, don't bring race into it. I was actually going to talk about this conference, and I just read about the story 10 minutes ago. So it's going to overshadow proceedings, but Labour can't complain about that if they have MPs with this mindset. Um, I have a feeling 2024 runs the risk of being another 1992. That is to say that the Tories are unpopular. Liz Truss is not in a strong position. There's already murmurings, as Andrew Marr reported, from Tory backbench MPs of staging another leadership revolt, which would be, I think, it would be very foolish. I mean, now they've went through all of this, they may as well hold on to her. But the Tories are not in a good way right now. I mean, Kwarteng was talking about it's a new era, but no, it's not. The Tories have been in power for 12 years. Um, so Labour really, really has a chance here to prove their credentials, to pitch to the middle ground, to pitch to floating voters. I think Starmer could potentially do it. What he needs to do is distance himself from identity politics. I'm not sure that he has done enough to do that so far. The fact he can't say what a woman is, the fact that he was pandering to the likes of Black Lives Matter, and a host of other things I'm not very happy about. But can he really be worse than the current Tory government? I'm not sure. I'm not worried about Keir Starmer, by the way, when it comes to foreign policy, because I don't think he's going to be another Jeremy Corbyn. Starmer's made it very clear he'll support Ukraine. He's taken a hard line with Russia and China. So has Angela Rayner. So I'm not concerned about that. I don't think we have this far left, anti West, anti Britain faction running Labour at the moment. Sure, they're there, the likes of John McDonnell and Jeremy Corbyn and others. They're there, Richard Bergen. But there are noise in the background. The important thing is Labour is now being run by people who understand that if they want to lead this country, they can't be against the country. I mean, that's just a no brainer. As for republicanism within the Labour Party, certainly there should be a place for it. We're a democracy, and there are Republicans in society. They have as much a right to an opinion as anyone else. But I think it's right that the national anthem was played. I think it's right that Starmer paid a tribute to the Queen for 70 years of service. Um, After all, he was knighted by her, Sir Keir Starmer. What I want to see from Labour, certainly keep hammering the Tories. I mean, that is the point of an opposition, to hold the government to account. It can't just be that. It can't just be criticising. They have to show what can they offer instead. Well, getting back to bread and butter issues, things like healthcare, policing, all this sort of stuff, getting away from identity politics would be very good. And this might be wishful thinking on my part, but I would like Labour to prove that they will be tough on crime. Now, apparently Rayner is. She takes quite a hard line on this. There was a piece in the Spectator about this. I still need to read up on it. I don't know about Starmer. He was a lawyer, of course. He was the chief prosecutor with the CPS. Um, so I don't know what. I think he's very cautious. But I think, in the last few weeks of the Johnson era, we saw Starmer really on form, really quite fiery. And it's like he suddenly found some energy. Apparently, he gets on with Truss better on a personal basis, which is not necessarily a bad thing. You don't want politicians just, you don't want a punch and judy show, but it is the job of the opposition to hold the government to account. And I think the Truss administration is just so tone deaf with how people feel about these greedy energy companies. And I know I keep mentioning that. I think it's the optics of it. It just plays into the stereotype of what the Tories are, and they're doing nothing to dispel that. So I have a feeling that if Labour is on the right traction, then Truss is going to be a very short-lived prime minister, 2 years at most. On the other hand, 2024 could be another 1992, where on the surface the Tories are unpopular, yet they still get through because Labour hasn't quite got enough together to win a general election. Yet all the polls show Labour is leading. They've won by-elections. Um, they can't be complacent, and they're right to not be complacent. But I would say to the Corbynite factions of Labour, do you want to stay in opposition forever? Okay, Starmer might not be your ideal, but if you keep sniping away and saying he's Tory light or he's just a closet Tory, what are you going to do? You're just going to weaken the party and ensure that Liz Truss wins the next general election. Is that what you want? I don't understand the thinking of Labour's hard left. It's like they can't see that they're going to stay in opposition forever if they don't get their act together. Support the leader, and he may not be their ideal, but would they really rather that Liz Truss and her government stay in power rather than have a Labour government? I don't understand it. Um, so for me personally, if Labour can prove it will be tough on crime and start to distance itself from this toxic identity politics, actually it's to consider voting for them. Because I don't have a problem with Labour when it comes to foreign policy. I think Starmer is level-headed. I think, um, yeah, I'm not concerned about that. Um, some of his domestic politics I'm not sure about, but time will tell.